Long down the right side, caught, touchdown, Washington State.
Long three.
What a catch by Phillip Bobo.
The Palouse is gonna pop.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Fieldhouse Report. Today, we have another special guest. It's the all-time Pac-12 touchdown passes and yards thrown leader, the Messiah, Luke Falk. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, man, that last part, Gabe Marks, he certainly coined that. Anyways, I just shake my head every time I hear that. But I'm doing well. You forgot to add the negative sacks, negative yards, kind of that stuff, too. I was just doing an interview, and they said, how many rushing yards did you have? I'm like, I don't know, maybe 100. Thinking to myself, I didn't say it out loud. They said negative 400. I said, ouch. So I guess I didn't get rid of the ball. Yeah, I didn't get rid of the ball.
Yeah, well, you were working on your footwork in the offseason, too.
Yeah, a little bit. You know, was blessed with slow feet, I guess. But I knew how to take a hit, except not really with the head thing. You know, so many times it was like, people were like, just hold your head up. And I guess I didn't learn it. And I started doing jiu-jitsu after my post-career. And they,
wow.
you know, in our warm-up, it was like you had to learn how to fall. And it was like, I could have used this taking a hit. I mean, you would have think after all those years of playing quarterback, I'd learn how to fall gracefully. It's just, I think if you're unathletic, it's harder to do.
That was actually one of the things my whole family's big Coug fans. I told them I was talking to Luke Falk this week, and that was something that both my brothers wanted me to ask you, was when you got hit and you would do this big neck thing. We thought, is he selling the late hit there? Is he trying to draw the flag, or is this just how he falls?
That's just, like I said, unathleticism. Wish I didn't, because it would have saved me a few head injuries. You know, maybe I wouldn't have needed as much mind strength to this day with all those head hits. But yeah, no, it was not on purpose. That's for sure.
You took a few against UCLA on the road. I think it was in the 2015 game that I did not think you were going to get up from.
Yeah, those were pretty. Anyways, I'll go into that hit. I got hit, sacked, probably like an 8-yard sack or something. Sorry, Coach Leach, for that again. Anyways, I started seeing like black and white, so I was crawling because I couldn't really find my bearings. And then, you know, they do the whole protocol. I don't know how I was able to play in the second half. It was a pretty fun second half, but I guess if that was my son, I wouldn't have wanted him to go back out there. But at the time, you know, you're just trying to do everything you can. So maybe I should be in sales because I sold it pretty good, I guess. And anyways, we're able to come back, and Gabe obviously made one of the, you know, great plays in his career that he just, I mean, I got spoiled. That him, Dom, River, Jamal. I mean, just I had a whole crew. Rob Lou, Kyle, I mean, Vince, Melee early on in my career. I mean, just so many guys. I was just so fortunate enough to play with those greats.
No, you definitely had a lot of great players that you played with. Amongst those, who would you pick as your number one receiver if you had to go one?
I'll give you the generic answer that I've given every reporter that ever asked that. Who do I like throwing to best? Whoever was open. You know, that was always my answer. Whoever got open. They all had their own unique ability. Like Dom was the best at verticals. Like I would throw him if I had one-on-one with a vertical. I mean, Dom Williams is as good as anybody ever. And that guy was incredible. Gabe was just, I mean, you just throw to Gabe's area and he's going to find a way to come down. I mean, he was so competitive. I mean, that guy had a competitive drive like crazy. And then River, there's a reason he's still playing to this day. Him and Gabe had an unbelievable job of just like, if I threw the ball out of bounds, they'd find a way to put one toe in and make the catch. Like, Gabe had a touchdown in Arizona in 2015 on the right sideline. He did that. He had one against Cal. He did that. I mean, the Cal one, it was on 92, and they played cloud coverage, and he converted it, and somehow he dragged his toe. And then River had an incredible one against Oregon State on, I think it was like early 94, we called it. And same thing on the sideline. They reviewed it, said it was not a catch early on, but reviewed it. And then it was like, how the heck did he do that? Because literally he's out of bounds. And then he's like, just dragged that toe in. So really all of them had their own unique ability. And then early on, like I said, Vince, I mean, he was a specimen. He was a freak. I mean, Rob Lou, you get him the ball in the shallow route, and then he's gone. I feel like I'm missing people. John Thompson, he had his own.
Yep.
I mean, each one of those guys brought a different thing to the package, and I don't want to ever exclude anybody when I'm even naming them out. So, and really, honestly, one of my favorite guys to ever throw to, Jamal Morrow. Jamal was so good out of the backfield, and he had such an ability to have balance. Like you could throw it anywhere, and he'd be able to find a way to contort his body. I wish we would have used him more in the empty packages because he's incredible. He to me always is like a just a total MVP from all areas. Really, all those guys back there. Gerard was our power guy. James was a mix up, and then Keith Arrington in 2015. Keith played great. So
Yeah.
Anyways, I can just rattle them off, and then the big boys up front. I mean, like I said, I don't want to exclude anybody because football is the most pure fun sport from a team standpoint. You need all 11 to do their job. If Gunnar Eklund's not making his block, Riley Sorensen, Joe Dahl, Eduardo Middleton, Cody O'Connell, Cole Madison, like all those guys I played with up front, if they're not doing their job, we can't get anything started. And then if somebody doesn't run the right route in the route tree, then it messes the system up. And if I'm not making the right reads, getting us into the right checks. So it's a lot of fun. It's organized chaos out there. And, it's really, there's no sport like it. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I think what you hit on there that's really important. You've already talked about your athleticism a little bit, but that didn't matter as long as you were the ball distributor, right? As long as you were able to get it to the guys like Jamal, like Gabe, that could make a play. And I think that that's part of what made you so special is that you didn't ever try to do anything outside of the system. You made the right reads, you got the ball to the people that could make a play, and you did it under significant pressure at times.
What they call it, game would be the epitome of that. It was like, I'm going to get us into the right checks. I'm going to go through the right process. Can I ad lib? Early on in my career, what's funny, if you go back and watch early tapes, which you really don't need to, it's not that important. But if you did, I move around a little bit more. And I'm not talking my sophomore year because I didn't in 2015, but like in 2014, when I got those first, the first action, the first taste, I'm moving around.
Mm-hmm.
I was semi-mobile, and it's like, this body just aged 5 years each year I was in college. And by the time I was a senior, I was like the Garth Brooks song, I'm much too young to feel this damn old. And then not to mention, they thought it was a good idea to try to put weight on me. And I tried that before when I was in high school. And all I do is get fat when I try to gain weight. And so I was tubby going into that senior year. So I really couldn't move. It was like, okay, I'm just like, and I saw Leach actually down in Key West, and I think it was 2 or 3 years after I graduated or something. He's like, "Well, finally, you thinned up. You were getting," and he like reached and grabbed my love handles. He's like, "You had these huge love handles." I'm like, "All right, thanks, coach. Good seeing you." So now, obviously, he didn't say it like that. He coughed a few times.
No, I do remember you scrambled against USC in that Friday night game against them in 2017, and I think I'm with everybody saying all of our hearts stopped because it was like you were running in slow motion, and I was just ready for one of those USC linebackers to come and just take your head off. Oh my gosh.
I was like 2 yards away from sealing the game on getting a first down, but I got caught from behind by their nose tackle, who it was their third string nose tackle at the time, probably, who ran a 5.4, but he beat me in a foot race.
Well, you staying healthy at that point was the thing I was the most concerned about. I was like, just get out of bounds, get down, just don't get hurt,
Throw the ball away. Throw the ball away.
I wish I would have learned that a little bit more. So it was funny. I got into college coaching, and I saw these things on Instagram and the girl math, right? Where it's like, well, if I buy this, this, and this, I get a discount. And really, I'm making money, which certainly could be my wife. She's an accountant, so she really can do the math. It goes above my social sciences degree. And so I created a QB math for the quarterbacks I was coaching. I'm like, if you take a sack, okay, if you would have just thrown the ball away, well, if you took a 6-yard sack, that's really a 6-yard gain if you threw the ball away. That's quarterback math.
Yep.
If you threw a check down, you got 1 yard rather than doing a 7-yard sack. That's an 8-yard gain. So I tried to explain that to them, and then most of my coaching I've done. That's the one I didn't do because they look back like, "What were you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I'm just patting the ball, waiting for something to go on." I wish I would have had a little more. Gardner was incredible at it. I watched Gardner's film. And that dude found the check down left and right. There's a reason he only had 11 sacks, and I think I had like 36. I think I averaged like 30 a year. So he's played way longer in the NFL than me, and he's already taken less hits.
Yeah. Very underrated part of his game, actually, is not just throwing the checkdowns, but throwing them quickly, deliberately, and getting his feet around to throw them accurately. Hit the guy in stride.
He's the best I've ever seen at it. Get in trouble, finds a check down. I mean, literally, I was at so Phil Longo was offense coordinator at Wisconsin, and the day I was there, he was taking his quarterbacks because Phil does a great job. He's now the head coach at Sam Houston, and he was just taking his quarterbacks through kind of like QB school and showing them Gardner film. Like, listen, you get in a bind, you got to know where your check down is. And then Phil asked me how I was at that. Not great.
Well, yeah, I mean, he had quick enough feet, right? Like, that was among the things that he could really extend plays and obviously be able to find the open man with relative ease. Something that, sometimes I think your pressure situations just looked a little bit different if you're talking about, coverage, protection, everything like that. So credit to you just the same there, Luke,
Listen, I did the best I could, Unfortunately, I'm probably in UW's Hall of Fame for helping them win 3 Apple Cups, but we won't talk about that.
Well, I do want to ask about that later. I think that's something that I and many other Kook fans have wondered for a long time is just what happened in those games. But we'll get to that in a minute. Take us back to high school, Luke Falk. It wasn't an easy high school football career. You dealt with injuries. You dealt with a move. How did you end up at Washington State? Had you even heard of Washington State before you started talking to Coach Leach? Talk about that process and how you ended up on the Blues.
Yeah. So, we were just talking earlier in high school, my parents were the parents that would do anything to get me to, the next level. I mean, so much so, this is actually, it might be worth your listeners' time. Go to YouTube and look up Luke Falk, type in CNN, and there was a parenting piece on extreme parenting, and you can see the depths that my parents were to,
Wow.
that what they would do to try to make things happen. Now, the problem is they didn't really put me in the decision-making process because there's no way in heck I wanted to move out to California and go through that whole deal. I loved it here in Logan. In fact, I just moved back here a week ago. This is, besides Pullman, this takes the cake. But so we moved to California because I was in a quarterback battle here with one of the great high school quarterbacks in this state's history. I mean, that guy's incredible. His name was Nelson, and our high school head coach had created a +1 system. So DJ would start the game out. He was a junior and I was a sophomore. And then I would get a series. And then DJ would go back out. And if he scored, he got to keep playing until he didn't score. And then I'd go in. If I scored, then I got to keep going until. And, looking back on it, man, what a great, cool asset for me when I went to Wazoo and started competing because I knew it's about production. It's about the only job the quarterback has. It doesn't matter however he does it. It's about getting your team in the end zone, doing what matters, elevating the team so you can go score points. And so I did that for a year. And then my parents, he had a younger brother named Chase, and my parents are like, well, you're going to be in a full Nelson. You're never going to get to play an opportunity here. And you were in a small town, and they had a big quarterback coach at the time telling them that I wouldn't be able to get recruited in Logan. So, it makes common sense rather than moving to Salt Lake. Well, we moved to freaking California to go to Hollywood High at Oaks Christian. And so I went there, and Oaks is completely different. I mean, people are driving G-Wagons. People are driving, rather than the pickup truck that is here in Logan. And not to mention, you're driving 45 minutes to get into school for a lot of those kids. It's not just like, man, my buddy's right down the road and we go to high school together. No, like my closest friend might have been 30 minutes and he lived in Oxnard, 40 minutes and he lived, wherever it was. And so it's just a completely different experience for me. And the curriculum school-wise, which I just did not like school. I love learning. I love learning about things I am really passionate about, like mind strength, football, all this stuff. schools like pulling my teeth. So then I went there, and it was way harder than Washington State, the degree I have. I'm not going to detract any potential Cougs in the future that don't think Wazoo's hard. Okay, I took an easy path. I took social sciences, but went there, ended up not working out. I had some shoulder soreness that I didn't get to train as much, but I started the season out. We actually played Bellevue High School down at what's that school called? Not Mater Dei. Anyways, one of those Southern Cal schools. Bellevue came down, and I threw 3 picks that game. Didn't really have a great game, and then they kind of phased me out where I wasn't the starter, and the guy named Brandon Dawkins, who ended up going to the University of Arizona, he ended up being the starter. And during that time in the summer, my parents had some marital issues, and they ended up separating for the first time. So a lot of turmoil was going on. Then I moved back to Logan, and when I moved back to Logan, I was deemed ineligible to play by the state of Utah. So I couldn't play, and then I ended up watching this, the guy that I battled with play with my teammates, my buddies, and his class, and then they went in 14-0, one of the great high school football teams in Utah history. And my role in it, well, I filmed the games. I was the GA. I broke down the games. My head coach wanted me to be involved as much as I could, so I didn't just kind of, go in a negative hole, which I very easily could have. And I really am gracious to him for putting me under his wing during that really hard time, because then I got to play basketball, and then not to mention the flack that you get from your buddies after moving to California and quote unquote leaving them. And then you come back and it's like, yeah, they're going to bust your balls a little bit. And then the rivalry around here in the small town's great. So we play basketball, and I foul out of one of the games, and you get the whole entire crowd chanting, Cali reject, Cali reject. And so it was a tough time. It really was. It was challenging. I wasn't getting recruited in football. I just watched my buddies win a state championship while I'm filming the freaking game up in Rice Eccles. That's where it was held. So, get offered going into my senior season by the University of Idaho. Jason Gesser was the offense coordinator there at the time. So they offered me. And how I got in contact with Pullman or WSU, I had never thought about WSU in my life. Really, I saw maybe one recruiter one time come to my school. That was like the first time. And because the logo, it's an easy logo to remember. So that's the only time I saw it. But when I went up to Idaho to meet with Gesser and some of the other coaches, we were eating at Gambino's. My parents wanted me to see if we could go over to Pullman and see the campus at Washington State. And then, I was saying we were up in Idaho doing the little tour up there, hanging out at Gambino's, and we thought we'd pop over to Pullman. And anyways, we reached out to Coach Mealy, Eric Mealy at the time, who was at quality control, and he was gracious enough to show us around campus, and that was my first point of contact, and he's the one that ended up recruiting me really hard. And I do want to say, just our thoughts and prayers out to him and his family and the tragic loss that they have. And anyways, that guy's one of my closest, he's in my core 5 for sure. And anyways, he's just an incredible dude. He's got an amazing family. So thoughts and prayers out to them. He continued to recruit me, and then what ended up happening is my senior season plays out. Idaho staff got fired. The new staff came in. They said I wasn't athletic enough to play for them, so I guess I can't blame them. And then pulled my scholarship, and then all that was remaining is I had a Cornell offer, which means that I got to go have the privilege of paying $50,000 and being the lowest ACT in, Ivy League history. Or I could go walk on at Washington State, which would have been a discount. I think it was 25 grand. So options weren't looking, too particularly good. But I ended up committing to Cornell because everyone kept saying how you go to an Ivy League, man, you're set for life. And I really liked the head coach, and I loved my recruiting coordinator. I loved the guy that recruited me, Travis Burkett. I think he's one of the best out there. And unfortunately, it's a shame that he's, I hope coaches reach out to him. That guy's an incredible recruiter and a really great guy. But anyways, committed to Cornell. Their head coach left like 2 weeks after, went to the CFL, was the head coach and a GM for one of the teams there, and felt like it was a higher calling, like God telling me, all right, you're going to go to WSU. So made the decision easy. They gave me a preferred walk-on opportunity, which really all that meant is the last little budget that they had to get somebody on an official visit. They let them do that. And that shored it up. And I felt like Coach Leach was honest when he said he'd give me a fair opportunity, and he was. So really fun to be able to go up there, and I got so lucky. I got so lucky. I was the 5th on the depth chart, and just the way things worked out that after 1 year of being a walk-on, I got put on scholarship, and then literally that season, I got a start quarter of the year at the end of the season. And then from that point on, I was a starter for 3 more years. So it's just like pretty wild. And when I look back at the series of events that happened, and just very grateful. I mean, Pullman and WSU is so special to me, all the great people there. And it's fun being able to see people like JP and Milton, the equipment room. Bill and Bobby are still there. So it's just, yeah, it's a special place. It's a long-winded answer. I know it's super long.
Oh, that's fine. It's one of those things where you talk about the likes of, teammates, coaches, all this stuff that kind of has obviously shaped you. Can you speak a little bit about, the 2015 season? You had a loss to Portland State early, which, amongst fans was very, disappointing. But obviously, as the student athlete that's playing in it, obviously the experience is just so much different. But then you kind of caught fire throughout that season. Drew and I spoke before the episode. 2015 season, it kind of seemed to be really this turning point season for the entire program. Could you speak to that, some of those games, and what you remember about that season and what really clicked for you?
Yeah, it didn't start out great. I was in a quarterback battle with Peyton Bender, who was a lot more talented than I was. And 2 weeks before the season, they gave him the starting reps. And, had a lot of coaches that were pushing for him to be the starter. So then when we lost to Portland State, it was like, oh my gosh, am I going to have my job? Because, I mean, that was an embarrassing loss. And what sucked about that loss is the quarterback on Portland State went to my rival high school. So it was like double whammy because I had people back home just giving me crap about it. And then we go and play Rutgers and had a punt return at the end that just they got up on top. And then I almost threw a pick to start the drive off with a minute 25 or whatever it was. And Rivers somehow did one of those things on the sideline that he does after it went through the DB's hands. And had that DB made a play, I'm not on your podcast. Nobody knows anything about Luke Falk and WSU history besides, hey, he lost to Portland State and whatever. People would be like, who? And anyways, but it didn't work out that way. And somehow the stars aligned. We ended up scoring on a game-winning drive with however many seconds left. And that was kind of the name of the game that whole season. Then we played okay at Wyoming, or played okay home Wyoming, and then lost on the road at Cal. Really should have won that game. And then when we played Oregon and that comeback with the improbable comeback, that I think that really turned the corner. And that was probably the most fun game I've ever played in. And then that whole season, that was like, we played Arizona, it comes down to one score game. We played Arizona State, we were down 17 zip, and we beat them. We come back in the fourth quarter and win. UCLA, that game,
Big
even the
one.
Stanford loss, it's like we found a way to put ourselves in a position to win it. And just that whole, literally that whole season, it was like just nail biters the entire year.
Yeah.
So that,
I was gonna say, that 2015 season, I was living in Seattle. I traveled down to Eugene for that game in Oregon, and I vividly remember because I was one of the loudest fans, of course. And I remember the final drive, and like feeling like it took forever, and then the pass. Pretty sure it's to Dom Williams right on the outside that you hit. And then you had your assistant coach, which it's come back as both memes and, yep, go for two. I'm going to ask you, Luke, how would you have felt if your team would have gone for two in that moment? And what would be the play that you would have picked?
oh, that's a good question. I've never had that answer before. I'm glad that we didn't because we had such momentum to go into overtime. I think it was the right move on Leach's part. We only had a couple 2-point plays, so I know it would have been either like an ace H move, 618 Z post, or it would have been some form of probably a play we called 8. Personally, if I had to choose, I would have gone with a trip set, early or late, and a mesh concept with a post and a wheel coming out of the backfield. That was my favorite red zone concept. I had Gabe on a touchdown actually on that very concept at the beginning of the game. That was the first touchdown on the back of the end zone. So I love that. I've I don't know how many touchdowns we've thrown off of that or conversions, but that would have been my go-to play had Leach said, "Hey, we're going to go 2 point. What do you want?" I'd been like, "All right, I want 92 PCP double will."
And did Leach often engage in conversations like that with you, relative, like, hey, what are you feeling? What are you seeing?
Kinda, his offense is just you could call whatever you wanted. So literally, I joke with when I was in the coaching interview process when I was in college coaching, I said, "Well, I was kind of the run game coordinator." Leach really had a few scripted runs throughout, but really the earnest is on the quarterback to make sure that you're checking into good plays in the right looks in the right box. And people forget that like 2016, we rushed 200 plus yards against Oregon, had 6 touchdowns. It was because that's what they kept giving us. And so the whole air raid offense is designed to attack where the defense is weak. So if they have a light box, we really want to be able to run it effectively. If they load the box, then we want to be able to spread them out. And if all things are equal, well, we're going to throw the shit out of it. And that's the whole idea behind it. So yeah, Leach would give the classic. He'd give a formation. He'd say check. And Leach is, you talk about less is more from a coach, but it really is true. And the brilliance of him is it wasn't about what he knew, it was about what he could get you to do and his players to apply, which is real coaching, which is real power. And, he had a day called 6-Day, and it's famous in the coaching world for people who, did you really run 4 verticals every rep of practice? Well, yeah, that's what he called every play at practice. We had 6-Day and we practiced our 4 verticals. But the big part of 6-Day to me is that the quarterback got to check. So I got to check run plays. I got to check tags. I got to check screens. And really what it did to you is he'd give you the formation and let you go check them. So then it trained your eyes to see what he wanted you to see. And if I'm calling plays and if I'm running the show, how much more ownership am I going to take? How much more learning? How much more studying? How much more of a deep knowledge am I going to have in the offense? And that was his brilliance, I think, and that's why his quarterbacks play at such a high level. Is one, the system's easy. The system never changes from the standpoint of, if you run mesh and you run it one way, well, guess what? You can rep one mesh and it's going to rep all of them because the reads are the very same. And if you know the reads and you keep the reads as being sacred, as Coach Leach said, and Graham Harrell would always beat in my head, then you're going to be in a good position. And then, not to mention, if you're the guy at the line of scrimmage being able to check in and out of good plays, you see a certain pressure look that they're going to be doing, and you can get yourself into something else. Well, you're playing with, you're playing, I guess, chess, and they're playing checkers to a certain degree. It's like they show and they tip their hand with you having the last. We're all drawing a play on the eraser on the whiteboard, but we've got the pen the last. That's kind of what it turned into at times. Now,
Right.
obviously, it didn't work out perfectly all the time, but for the most part, him giving the power to the quarterback really created a great advantage for us. And too, it was like I love Leach. It was like, I get to the NFL and I'm in the West Coast offense, and you need to hitch on this and make sure you're doing very diligent. And Leach, we didn't talk about footwork. It was just throw the ball on time. Now, maybe there should have been a little bit more structure, and that might have helped my game a little bit. But at the same time, I love the freedom of just do your job. And he was not a micromanager. A lot of these coaches, they try to micromanage everything. Leach literally let Grinch do what he wanted to do on defense. Grinch was like a head coach on defense. He didn't micromanage. He didn't micromanage me as a player. Just do your job and produce results, and you're good.
That's awesome. That must have been such a awesome experience to be able to kind of have that freedom, particularly for a
Yeah.
player like yourself.
So when people talk about the NIL and like, oh yeah, you would have transferred, you would have been, would have been hard to turn down $3 million if I got offered that. I don't know if anybody would have offered me that, but yeah. But I really would have had a hard time with it because one, I love Pullman, but two, I knew that I was a successful player because I was in a successful system. I knew that because I had a great coach. I had somebody who really supported me and believed in who I was as a player. So it would have been really, really challenging, but I don't even think I would have been able to play during this era because they wouldn't have had a walk on. They would have brought somebody else in. They would have had a transfer. They would have, all these things. It's such a different era in today's day and age. And hopefully they can put some guardrails on it and really help these student athletes grow as young men and young women, because that's what college sports is supposed to, a big fundamental part of it is. It's like when I got to WSU and I'm the 5th on the depth chart, I wanted to quit. I hated our strength coach. His name was Jason Lascalzo. We called him Loco because he's crazy. Like, I wanted to quit, but I didn't because you had to push through, you had to persevere. And what great mind strength skills and lessons I got to learn. If the portal was open today, I probably would have been out, probably would have been gone. So it's unfortunate that these student athletes don't get the privilege of going through hard, because hard creates a heaven-like state, in my opinion, versus the easy way out can create a hell-like state. You take the easy thing, guess what? You do that long enough, you're not going to like where you're at.
Yeah. All of that kind of led you, to kind of be in this position, to follow in your idol's footsteps at pick 199. In that moment, what did that mean to you to get picked? Tom Brady, 199, you were picked 199.
Yeah. It's funny. I was actually writing about this today and talking with one of my clients. And Tony Robbins has a thing called modeling. And modeling, what that means is pick somebody who is in a place that you want to be, whom you respect, and figure everything you can about them, how they think, their process, their whatever, and follow in their footsteps. And you'll be able to get to where they're at a whole lot faster than you would if you just go through trial and error. Right? Success leaves clues, as he said. And I literally used to, at lunch, I would type in Tom Brady on YouTube. It might sound kind of creepy, or Google, and I would try to figure out and find out as much as I possibly could about Tom Brady. That's how I found out a book called The Four Agreements, and there were mind strength skills in that book that I use to this day. So I don't think it was any coincidence that when I got picked at 199 in the 6th round, it's like because I had modeled so much. Now, I would love to tell you that I was jubilant, and I was super happy, but I wasn't. And here's why: because, the year prior, I was getting told if I would have left my junior year, I'd have been a 2nd or 3rd round pick. Well, that's a lot of money that just got eaten up by being a 6th round slide. I mean, I was on Mel Kiper's board forever, not as long as Shador, but I was on there for a long time.
Right.
And unfortunately, I had a mindset where I felt entitled, and I felt bitter, and I felt embarrassment rather than really joyful and a lot of gratitude that I had an opportunity to get to go play. The second part of that is at the NFL draft and the NFL combine, people see what you do on the field, and I didn't have a great physical combine day, throwing all that stuff. We can get into that later. But interview wise, that's really the big portion of the combine. You meet with all these teams. And my meeting with the Titans, I go into the room, and Mike Vrabel's like, sit your ass down, this, that. And he was just like very like attacking the entire time, trying to test you. And, he throws the tape. I'm not going to share too much, but it was like a very, hey, you're getting tested here, versus some of the other ones. You go in the meeting room, you're meeting Dan Marino. But I got out of the Titans deal, and I called my agent who represented Marcus Mariota at the time. I said, well, thank goodness you guys have Mariota with the Titans, because I don't want to go there. And lo and behold, that's who I get drafted by on, draft day. It was like, oh man, all right, here we go. I just wasn't in a great headspace to handle that type of coaching at the time, which, I wish I was, because Coach Vrabel's a great coach, and I know he's going to be successful with the Patriots.
Right. Tell me a little bit about you, 2017. It's a very unique season. You had a few opportunities where essentially you got benched. And of course, there were maybe some injuries that kind of contributed to that. But how did you use some of those skills that you speak to within, mind strength? How did you use that at that time, and how did you apply it?
That's
to
great. I
overcome?
was in a total slump. Great question. Not kind of benched. I got benched. So Boise State, I got benched, and then he wanted me to be able to evaluate the game from the sideline. And then when I went back out and played again, then I got a concussion. I got knocked out. But literally, I got benched, and Tyler came in and did great. And I was pissed after that game. But now looking back on it and having perspective, I'm sure glad that Tyler got that moment. The Arizona game, that one pissed me off, because the year prior, I got to bust Des Patman's balls a little bit. It's like, okay, we had an opportunity to have a touchdown pass that got dropped. And, then it was like I got benched the next series or whatever. And the year prior had 4 touchdown passes to only 3 incompletions. I felt like I had Arizona's number dialed in. It was just a matter of getting there. So I was pretty pissed after that Arizona game. But, I was going through a total slump. It was like, we played Cal. I threw 5 interceptions. Then we play Colorado. Okay. And then I get benched against Arizona. That's a really tough 3-game slide. And one of the tools and methods that I used to help me actually came from my high school basketball coach. He said, do you ever go back and watch some of your favorite games and see what you're capable of? And I'm like, no, that's dumb. I'm not going to go do that. But I'm glad I did. I went back and I watched some of those games where we triumphed and some of the games I played great, but I didn't just go watch it for my own, hey, I'm doing a good job here. What I was doing is, what did I do well in those games? Okay, I had a can-do mindset. I was cool hand Luke. I didn't get rattled. I didn't get too high. I didn't get too low. And then the other thing is that I played with house money. I was very decisive. It didn't matter if I made the wrong decision or the right decision. I was going to pull the trigger. And so I saw that. And what I saw in the games prior is that I was playing with timidity. I was trying not to make a mistake. I had paralysis by analysis.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I did then is, okay, these are the things that helped me be successful in those games. Let me apply that to the next one. So we go and we play Stanford at senior night. And guess what? Use those 3 skills I focused on. Can-do mindset, cool hand Luke, and I'm playing with house money. I threw a pick 6. Guess what? I pulled the trigger. I was decisive. I'm cool and collected, and then we go have a 94-yard drive to win it at home. And I don't think that's possible because I don't think I would have been in the right framework had I allowed, the past to happen. I'll just give you a short little mind strength thing right here. When something negative happens, an athlete, they go in like a negative play cycle. They wish it didn't happen. They have the guilt that they wish it didn't happen. And then they have embarrassment. And then they get fearful and worried that it's going to happen the next play in the future or the next game. And so then they play with timidity or they play with reckless abandonment trying to get it all back. And what happens is they spoil the present moment. They spoil the present play. So, I ask my athletes, can one play equal 2? And they say no. I said, absolutely it can if you allow the previous play to impact the next one. So what I also did is help myself go through the play the next play process during those games. And the first step of that is, hey, what can I learn? That's the only useful thing you can get from the past. What can I learn from it? Great. Okay, next, get present. I'm not looking about the future. I'm getting in the present moment. That's what I can control. So I have a series of breath work that I do in that regard. Third, I build myself up. I have affirmations, statements, things that can-do mindset that I talked about, rather than calling myself an idiot, Dumbo, you always do this, like a lot of people do. They get real negative on themselves. You need to be your biggest ally at that point. And then fourth, refocus on the skills, the process, not being worried about the outcome. And so watching my previous games and seeing what I did well, and then also that play the next play process of, here's some things I learned, getting present, building myself up, and then, all right, let me refocus on these skills. And for me, my skills were can-do mindset, cool hand Luke, house money, and then was able to break one of the records for that day with the passing yards. And we had a fun 94-yard drive, capped off an undefeated season at home for the first time in WSU history, and I was Pac-12 Player of the Week. All of that wouldn't have been able to be possible had I done what so many athletes do and sulk and allow their previous performance to dictate how they feel about themselves as a player.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it was an easy time. It was not. I don't recommend slumps for anybody. And that was as hard as I've ever done, because on my senior day, it was like, had spent however many years playing at WSU. In that season, I hadn't had the adversity with my own fan base. But after that Boise game, I'm playing against Oregon State, and people are yelling, "Put Tyler in, bench Falk." I had never had that, right? I was the guy that, it was kind of like the golden child, it felt like. And then it was the same thing on my senior day. It was still that adversity through the pick. Hey, throw Tyler in, rather than enjoying and feeling appreciation. But that's sports. You can't live off of people's approval, the fan base. You can't, because if you do, you're living on this teeter-totter trap. And so many athletes do. And what I try to teach and coach is a way to be able to get them off and having a strong foundation in something that's not external and can't be so easily manipulated.
Yeah. I mean, you had a lot of success throughout all of Washington State, and certainly it evolved as you went through all of your years there. What did it mean to you to break the single season, the career touchdown record at Utah at the time in your home state, not too far from where you grew up?
Yeah. Well, that's my third favorite accomplishment. My first is that all-time wins leader, because I think a quarterback is all about winning games, and that was one I was going for. So Gesser, it was fun to beat Gesser's record in that regard, but it's not mine. it's the team, right? You can't do it without the team. So I think it's a great team record. The second one is I love the fact that we had 7 comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks. I think they're tighter games, but because I had such a belief system before in high school that I was not clutch, but going through mind strength training was able to become Cool Hand Luke, right? I think one of the signature things that maybe people remember if they watched BSU football during that era is we won some close games. We won some things where it felt like we were going to pull through. And I think a large part of that is because I played well during those moments. That wasn't the case for me in high school, and I certainly didn't have a belief system that way. But that third one, I guess it was really special to me because I filmed the state championship game watching my buddies win it at Rice Eccles. That was the team that passed me up of not giving me a scholarship, not even giving me an opportunity to walk on at the University of Utah. I'm only an hour and a half away. So it meant a ton to get that record there as like not the final, because I wanted one more and we didn't get it against UW. That would have been like the final, receipt, kind of the receipt on certain things. But it was really special. I still remember the play. We had Ace. I looked over at Kyle. They were playing zero coverage. I gave him 617. He ran a quick speed out, and there's the touchdown. But what was more important to me that game is we won, and that gave us an opportunity to then put ourselves in a position to, play for the Pac-12 championship if we beat UW, which obviously that didn't go the way we wanted it to.
Yeah. Well,
still pisses me off to this day. Like I see people are like, "Oh, do any games bother you still?" I'm like, "Yep." So.
Well, we're sorry to hear that. We need to let you get over that one because obviously we won last year's with Kyle Thornton sealing with that big tackle there at the end of the goal line stance. And, as fans, we appreciate it. We understand, obviously, that those defeats mean a lot to you, too. So tell me a little bit about how you kind of came to do Mind Strength and develop this business of yours and where you're at now.
Yeah, well, for me, it wasn't like wasn't an additive on my career. It was the foundation for my success. And then also when I didn't continue working on it, it was the thing that, I got to the NFL and I quit working on the thing that got me there. I quit working on my mind strength, and I quickly saw how fast you can fizzle out when you don't do that. And so I really struggled a lot in high school with confidence. I struggled a lot thinking with pregame nerves, with performance anxiety, with negative self-talk, with all these issues. And I trained so hard physically. If you know one thing about me, I work really extremely hard, and I was working on the things that were available to me. And then my family, I told you, they should support me in any way possible. They introduced me to a mental performance coach, and he showed me that the mind is no different than the body, that if you work on it properly and consistently over a period of time, it would become strong. You develop mind strength. He didn't call it that, but that's what I've called it now. And this was true. I started to experience breakthrough after breakthrough, and I saw an elevation in my confidence and my demeanor and just the way I approached the game and the way I approached life. And I always thought that, when I get in a position, because I knew playing, whether I was 45 or in my case 25, I'd be done at some point. But I felt I was born to be a coach. And when I was going into the coaching realm, I knew I wanted a method or mind strength to be a foundational piece. So even in college coaching, it taught mind strength. And then now being out of it, it's like, I think it's so needed. I think not only does it help you on the field, but golly, it can help you in your everyday life. And what are my qualifications? I've had some parents ask me that. I said, well, RLE. And they go, what's that? I'm like, well, it's called real life experience. I've done these principles. I've been the man in the arena. I know whether they work, whether they don't. I'm not giving you theories that I plucked from a textbook here. And so that's how I got into it. I'm very passionate about it. It's like I said, I don't like school, but I love learning. And this is when I have free time, I'm devouring any self-development, any self-help type thing, because I think I went from being so insecure in who I was and having so little confidence in who I was that these methods really helped me get to a point in my life where I really, it's not like I don't struggle with these things daily. It's not like I don't struggle with these things often, but I have the skills and the tools now to be able to help me, right? It's not like you're perfect with mind strength. You just have the ability, and you have the know and the wherewithal to be able to help you pull yourself out of certain situations and help you enhance and increase, others. So that's how I got into it, and I love it. I mean, when I was coaching, it's like at some point that player's done. And what good is him learning how to throw a spiral going to serve him? Or, a tennis player knowing how to do a serve. I guess you can play that game a little bit longer, but mind strength sticks with you forever. You can use it in any arena.
Right.
And it transcends sports, transcends business, it transcends anything. So I have a real passion and mission in my life to really help people unlock their full God-given potential through strengthening their mind.
That's awesome. I'm actually grateful to have you talk about it on here. Obviously, working in the mental health space, I can appreciate that and certainly value what you're offering to athletes and anybody that's really willing to listen. I mean, please subscribe to all of Luke's channels, and there's a lot to learn if you just pay attention. So, yeah.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I think it's a unique program. I've stand on the shoulders of the greats before me, and what's fun about this is it's so many different arenas.
Yeah.
It's John Wooden's got some teaching points in there. A
Right.
guy named Wayne Dyer's got. I mean, it's just. But what's fun about it is in a sequential order and program that can really help the athlete step by step start to develop these great foundational skills for their own mind strength journey.
That's awesome. Do you find yourself going into local high schools around the area to help with those things as well?
So not in the way that maybe you're asking, but I do these mind strength experience events. In fact, we got one coming up in Seattle on June 12th at Skyline High School, and then we're going to Kamiak High School on the 13th. But I got one coming up here in Utah on May 14th. And what we do is we go to a high school, book out the auditorium, invite the local athletes, parents, coaches, and people come. We have a mind strength experience night that night where we talk 60 to 90 minutes on these great key principles and really plant the seed, because not a lot of people know about it, or they don't know who to turn to. It's not that they don't want to work on their mind. It's they don't know how. And really, how many people are qualified to tell you here are some things that work, who have done it in terms of mind strength itself from a performance standpoint. So I'm in a unique position, and I want to be a great steward of the position that I'm in, where, listen, I've been in your shoes, whether you're a tennis player, whether you're whatever, male or female, I've been on the journey, and I've climbed the highest mountains, and I've also fallen off because I didn't continue my journey. And then I've been on the other side of being a private coach, but then I've been a college coach, and I've seen it from these other angles. So really, all three sides of the spectrum that sports have to offer, besides maybe being a parent to an athlete. My daughter's 2 right now. Hopefully she likes sports and golf and all that, but if not, no worries. I'm certainly not going to push her to do what I want her to do.
What do you want her to do?
But anyway,
what do you want her to do?
If I could draw the perfect picture out, she'd like tennis a lot and she'd like golf. And that would be a lot of fun. I'd go play golf with her, and she could beat my butt in tennis too. I still haven't beat my wife in tennis, so I need more. I don't think it's a mind strength thing. I need more athleticism. And I'm hoping my wife, because she was the fastest gal at her entire school, the fastest kid in her elementary school, her 5th grade year. And I'm really hoping we marry kind of my hand-eye coordination and her speed and athleticism. We got ourselves winners.
They're going to be a kook, right, Luke?
We'll see. I mean, that would be the plan. If when they're throwing these offers out super early, maybe we can get her a tennis offer at 2 years old, right? NIL, secure it up.
Let's get it done right now. Signed, sealed, delivered to the
Signed,
Falk
sealed,
family.
delivered.
Yeah.
That'd be good.
Awesome. Well, Luke, thank you so much for being on the Fieldhouse Report today. Thank you for sharing all of your experiences, both at Washington State and currently within your professional life as well. We're so appreciative of the time.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you having me on, and sorry about the technical difficulties, but way to persevere. And as always, go Cougs.
Go Cougs.